Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to another installment of Conversations about Art. My name is Alan Constant. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm here with Paul Rowland, who lives right outside of Tokyo, Japan, and Duane Toops, who lives in Melbourne, Florida. Today, we're going to be talking to Ross Severson. Ross is a mixed media artist from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So welcome, Ross.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad you agreed to join us. So we're looking forward to this. To get into the conversation, I'd like to ask you about your art background, whether you've had any art education, and how you got to where you are with your art.
I don't really have an origin story for art. Going back all the way to high school, I remember paying a kid in my history class to do a painting for a project. So I don't think art was really on my radar at the time, though I had like art, teachers that wanted me to enroll in like university for art and gave me pamphlets and stuff and tried to encourage me, but I kind of just wanted out of school and didn't really want to do any further education. I was really more focused on skateboarding and making music at the time. I guess at some point in time, I got exposed to like Jackson Pollock and the abstract expressionists. And I kind of had like the same moment I had when I was a teenager with like Nirvana. And I was like, I need a guitar. And I was like, man, I need to try and paint. Making music was fun, but it was a group thing. And so it relied on everybody being able to align their schedules, do that kind of thing. And painting, I could just do whenever I wanted. So it kind of grew on me. I was making art for like show flyers, things like that. Doing it in the background of I pursued music for like 12 years or so, trying to do that. But I had massed up a bunch of paintings and I eventually started a vintage store, which I did for like 10 years. And I found that, I needed stuff for the walls, in my shop. And I started selling my paintings like cheap, like $50, $100. And they sold out. And I was like, oh, I guess I better keep making more. And gradually raising the prices to the point where I don't need to do the store anymore. And I just focusing on art these days. So that's kind of been the progression, I guess.
So are you doing art full time now?
I am, yeah.
Do you have a gallery that represents you? Or
Not really. I work a little bit with a gallery in Atlanta. Mason Fine Art has some of my work there, but mostly like friends who have vintage shops in like Chicago and Minneapolis have been selling my paintings for me. Some places around Milwaukee, but it's not like I'm getting rich off of it or anything, but enough to pay the bills. So
well, it's something to say you're making a living from your art because most artists I know aren't at that level. So I think it's something.
I'm grateful for it every day. I knew from a young age, like I did not dream of labor, I didn't want to work in a factory. I did farm work, heavy work, and like just wasn't my thing. I appreciate my schedule every day, but it is not the most fun to have to monetize your artwork. That's a hindrance to the creative process for sure. But I'm working through it, trying to find my path through it.
Sounds great. Well, let's take a look at some of your work now.
Okay, Ross. When I was looking at this one, for me, it's all about weathering, but it's more about weather. I don't know if that's on my mind recently, but I can see storm clouds with rain on the right, obviously down the bottom right as well. There's maybe some mountain landscape happening over the left, and possibly even a river in that lovely sweep of black paint. Can you tell us about weathering? Why this aging and wear and decay is so important for you. Many artists have talked about it before, but I just find it an endlessly fascinating subject.
Yeah, I find it crucial, I guess, to my work. Is that's why I like working with old paper and older materials, because paper holds a history that can't really be repeated. Even going back owning a vintage store, I always worked with older furniture, just been drawn to vintage. I grew up antiquing with my family. That was like their hobby. We didn't go camping, we didn't do that kind of stuff. We went to like junk stores and antique malls and roamed around and looked at stuff. And I think that fascination with history and storytelling has always been a big part of what I've been doing artistically. And I don't know that I realized it at first. I mean, my earlier work was mainly just like hard edge color painting, and it just grew into this. Once I started working with paper, I never turned back.
Could you just tell us about the creation of this work a little bit? You talked about working with paper. How much of this is found? How much of it is painted? I can't quite tell how you actually made it.
The base of all of my work is fully paper, so the whole base of that is fully made with paper. I add the paper onto a canvas until the whole canvas is completely covered. Sometimes it'll be just the raw paper, and this one is heavily painted. I'd say the majority of it is covered in paint, and scraped away and different areas. This piece for me, I guess I see my work as like a series of plateaus. You work so many hours doing this. I like a lot of repetition. I'll do the same thing over and over again every day until I reach like a moment where a work really speaks to me. And then I feel like I've reached like another plateau, and then I have to work and work. And this was one of those moments where it really came together for me, and I was just really happy. I struggle with this alignment too. I usually like to go the other way, but this one just worked out.
What was that moment when it all came together? Because I see you've got this really evocative title. It's almost like a Radiohead title, Sleep When You Can. What was
Yeah,
that moment? What happened when it all came together?
it's actually a line from Herman Melville's Moby Dick. For some reason, this spoke to me as like that white whale moment, and like that large tear in the center kind of reminded me of the whale. And I was like, I really want to find a title from some kind of sentence from that story that spoke to the work. Then it kind of spawned a whole series of sleeping titles, I guess. And I'm not sure when the moment, I think when I did that final drip on the right hand corner, and I was just like, okay, I really like, I've tried to replicate it several times, and it's just something happened. I haven't been able to replicate it, but it just worked out perfectly for me. And I was like, I'm not touching this. It's done.
Oh, it's perfect. And now you mentioned Moby Dick. I see it as like a seascape. There's a whole narrative going on here. That's just marvelous.
So I was really, really excited to do this. I have been a big fan of your work for a long time. I've followed you for a long time, and I've always really, really enjoyed the interactions we've gotten to have too. So I'm just really
Likewise.
excited that we get to have a little bit of a conversation. I would love to talk about two moments that you brought up earlier, and I'll be definitely honest enough to say that I'm bringing it up because I'm biased. You mentioned that your experience of Jackson Pollock was as similar in its paradigm shifting as listening to the Nevermind album for the first
Yeah.
time. And whenever I tell my origin story, those are two of the key moments for me, exactly. In moments like that, what happened? What did you feel or experience, and what part of that are you still bringing with you into the work you're doing now?
I guess just the belief that I could do it, I'm like, I think I can do this. I went for it. I guess that's the best part of art in general, any form of art, is if you believe you can do it, there's nothing stopping you. Like I said, I like repetition, so I like to just keep going at it until I get something. The process is what's fun for me.
I can share that with you exactly as well. There's something about things being systematically almost becoming redundant that also invites mystery and change in as well. It seems like the small details of things becoming different become more emphasized when they're arriving in a place that's so mechanically repeated. Do you
Absolutely.
find that that degree of repetition is what leaves you more open to mystery, or is that something you think about at all?
I feel like with the repetition, I find something I like and I keep doing it till I get to the place where I'm bored with it. And once I'm bored with it, I have to destroy it somehow. And even if I have the perfect piece, I realize I'm at the point where like I have to just, and you can see it with this painting that you just pulled up, where I did the giant white square. There's a whole collaged painting underneath that, and I had to just destroy it. And like all that work, and I was just like, it's time to move on from this style. I need to do something else. And I just, when you do enough repetition, it's like, I have enough pieces that look like this. I'm going to destroy this and see what happens.
Is that an easy shift for you to make, or did that something you had to kind of get
Uh,
okay with?
I had to get okay with it because it's a
Yeah.
struggle, especially coming from like doing hard edge work. It's like precision. I don't want to screw. Oh, there's a little waver in the line, and to break free of that is a struggle. I think I'm my own worst critic. I've never really had to talk about my art. This is a first for me. Like I'm usually like in my own little laboratory, so I'm trying to. I've had this conversation with you guys about 100 times in my head the last 2 weeks. So I'm trying to tap into that stream of consciousness of what I've already said to myself. But yeah.
I love it. So far, you've done nothing but speak my language, so we're good. Go. Let's go ahead and move on to the next piece, Paul.
I really like the way the frame is bending in from the sides here. Was that intentional? And why the square for this one?
I think that I'm just a terrible photographer. So it's square.
You mentioned before that you find it maybe a bit easier to work in portrait, like vertical format.
Yeah.
Landscape is a bit tricky. Why is that?
I don't know. Square I hate too. So I guess it's because all of my studies that I do are always, I don't know if you can see this. It's like I work on these like little index cards. So I have like this format is like that's what I is always in my head. And so sometimes I've bought so many canvases at the local store that they haven't restocked, and I have to move on to like a different size begrudgingly because I don't want to stop working. And I'll end up, or I like to thrift canvases too. I think this one was a thrifted canvas that I just painted over the top of. I'm a scavenger like that. I like to reuse things. So
So what's the process? You work from these little index cards. You do a mock-up there first, and that's your preparation?
I don't do mock-ups of any of the work. But in between paintings, I like to keep working, and I do a lot. I think some of the other pieces coming up, I call it like the deconstructed sketchbook. It's like basically just doing like little mock-up. I like to work intuitively, kind of like a free jazz musician, improv, and I'll just take whatever scraps are on the desk and try and make something from it. I don't like put a lot of thought into it. I just put a record on and get to work. And sometimes I'll find things that I can work into bigger pieces. The problem with doing the bigger pieces, working with paper is small. So to translate big is really difficult, which is where the paint comes in, obviously, but the paint doesn't always give the same effect as the paper. So I'm constantly hunting down like large pieces of old paper or newsprint and stuff from estate sales and things like that to try and make the pieces bigger and bigger. So I like working big, but paper is very much limited in its size. So a lot of the bigger pieces, there's a lot of detail that really gets lost probably in these pictures, but in person, there's a lot going on.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Should we go on to the next one?
Where you just landed is one of the things that I had made a note that I wanted to talk to you about anyway. So I love that you've kind of naturally guided us there. Because what I love about looking at your work on a regular basis is seeing how fluidly and almost cohesively you're able to jump between scales. Like your index card collages are every bit as vibrant and like enthralling, and then you can scale up just like be more than double in some of these larger pieces, and it still stays definitively and recognizably you stylistically. How has that transition? Did you really have to put in a lot of effort to scale up to that size? Did you start at that scale and then shrink back? Tell me a little bit more about how scale plays into your process and your practice.
It took a lot of time and experimenting with different mediums to get bigger with the work. I like working small. People don't like to buy small stuff. Most of the small stuff just sits in boxes here in the studio. And also working with tiny paper, like if you frame it up under glass, if it's just a cheap frame or something like that, somebody puts it in the window, that old paper is just gonna disappear, fade, or which I don't mind, but I feel bad if somebody doesn't expect it, and so to scale up to something big, get the different thicknesses of paper and things like that to attach to canvases was a challenge. I think I've got to the point where I'm fairly happy with how I still hate varnishing. I mean, I get like deathly sick every time I spray these things with varnish, even if I go outside. So it's like the bane of my existence is to varnish artworks. I think I've gotten to the point where I'm happy with the process, but I'm sure I'll try and change it on myself now that I'm content.
That's usually how it happens for me as well. When it starts getting smooth, you start figuring out how to destroy that too.
Yep, absolutely.
Have you found that parts of your craft or practice translate in one scale better than they translate in others? Or are there things, I guess as part of that same question, are there things that you see happen in one scale that just doesn't quite happen in the same way at another scale?
My use of color is something I struggle with on a large scale. Like I always want things to be as white I mean, the majority of my paint that I use is different shades of white. So bringing color into the work is a struggle. I'd be happy with just a painted white canvas on the wall. I'm a minimalist at heart, but I can never truly accomplish it in the works, I guess.
So with that said, tell me about the transition to an assemblage piece like this.
Yeah, the What Remains series is probably my favorite of the works I do. These I kind of do for myself. I've never tried to sell any of them. They're all hanging in my studio on the wall or stacked up everywhere. And it's all just off cuts of things that I've used in paintings or collages or framing, cutoffs from the frames I've made. I don't know. I'm a hoarder. I can't throw anything away. So they're all in piles. So the whole idea is that these are what remain. I don't alter them in any way. I just put them together and I'm like, I don't want to use glue. I don't want to, I'm just going to staple this on here. And this is how I want it to be. And I get to just mess around and be free with it, make all kinds of weird shapes. And now I found myself collecting trash that I see that looks cool from. I did it yesterday when I was going to get the mail. I'm like, look at this piece of wood on the side of the road. I'm going to use this.
I can relate 100%. I work very near a grocery store, and they put those bales of cardboard after they've been compacted outside the building. And at least every time I see one, I keep a box cutter in my car. And so whenever I see those cardboard bales there, I go in there, I just cut everything I can get off of it. I've just got
I
bins
love
of that. So I understand completely.
So, and a lot of this stuff is like I'm friends with this old guy who has a record shop. He's in his 80s. I've been going there for like 20 years collecting records. And he always saves his trash for me. And it's always like so the polka dot part of that was a container that like 7-inch 45s came in like the 40s and 50s, and like the index dividers, the A thing is like an old Atlantic like 45 sleeve. So I just like I love when he gives me his trash, and he gives me a lot of old sheet music and stuff that nobody wants anymore, but I love
Yeah.
it. I love when they're like water damaged or written all over, or some kid drew on it with crayon or
It's that history and narrative that just can't be replicated any other way. Yeah.
absolutely.
Let's go ahead and go into the next one.
Well, talking about kids scribbling on things, is this you scribbling at the top and like making marks, almost like a prisoner in a cell, like marking off time?
Yep.
How much are you actually marking things up?
With this one, quite a bit. This one was a frustrating piece that wasn't really coming together for me. And so I was really carving into the layers of paint and covering over parts that I had done over and over again until I got to a place where I wanted it. And like the circles, that's like an old record sleeve that's opened up. The like stamped out corner. I like to give my daughter like pieces of my art material and be like, here, play with this, draw on it, or use a stamp or whatever. And I'll put it in the art, and she gets excited when she gets to be a part of it. And so that's kind of where that stamp and that bag was. Like I had bought some records and they gave me a paper bag or whatever, and I was like, here, let's use this. Actually, the blue is a reproduction of Elvis's obituary or something like that. It was like somebody had printed it out, and the cover of it was this baby blue piece of paper. And I was like, oh, this looks cool. I'm going to use that.
That is very cool how you've got like your own personal narrative and even that of your family in it.
Yeah.
And obviously you're getting some of your stuff from your interests, the vintage shop and the old guys. So I see these record sleeves, these beautiful moons, these circles everywhere. But it must mean something to you, like these repeated motifs and the fact that you place it on top of things. There's a beautiful one later, which is like the kind of Taiji, like yin and yang symbol and stuff.
Yeah.
What do these motifs mean to you?
Music and record collecting and has been just like my connection, I guess, to the world. It keeps me grounded when things are out of control. I can put on music and like I can go to this shop, and like being a artist is kind of isolating. You know, you're at home, your work or your studio working alone. There's not a huge like art community in Milwaukee. I'm sure the artists here would maybe say otherwise, but I didn't go to art school. I don't know a lot of the people, and I'm pretty antisocial to begin with. And raising two kids keeps me at home a lot or doing stuff with them. So like going to the record shop all these years, and like it's always the same people there, and they're just as obsessive as me, and can talk we could talk for hours, about ridiculous minutia about music and things like that. So it's just kind of like it means a lot to be able to incorporate it into the artwork. It feels like I'm putting a piece of myself into the work. It's like a history of my life, the things that I've collected. Like most times somebody puts a record in a sleeve like that, they put it on a shelf in a box, they don't see it. And here I can display it as, the piece of art that I think it is.
That makes a lot of sense. I like the fact that the bag at the top left gives like a glimpse into the real world in a sense, because obviously lots of your pieces are very abstract, but I'm also really intrigued by these black and white slivers. Is that like some kind of dripped or scraped paint, or is it like a black and white photograph of a forest? Sometimes I see that in your work, like little glimpses, like memories or something, or like a little crack into another world. What's going on there?
That is black paint. I put it on with like a sponge. I don't know, I like that effect because like you said, it looks almost like a birch tree or a forest or something like that. And like it speaks to me. If I'm using paint and I got extra paint on the brush, there's always a pile of paper on the floor, and I'll just use up the rest of the paint over whatever. And that's kind of how some of these materials just come into being.
That's really interesting. Should we keep moving on?
One of the things I'm interested in, especially given that you have an actual, not only just a love of music, but an actual music background, or in at least experience in playing and bands and doing that. I can share that with you as well. Do you find anything reminiscent of making music in your current practice? Is any part of your process similar to that experience of musicality in any way?
I think so. The physicality of it, the physicality of playing and the physicality of making art is something that I'm drawn to. It's a very physical process. Sometimes it can be utterly exhausting if you're going at something. This piece in general was utterly exhausting to go at, fighting with it. And I like that. Like originally I wanted to be a writer, and I found that was just way too docile of a, just too much sitting in one place. With art, the movement of it, it's like a dance you do with it sometimes. And usually I'm crouched. I'm not like an easel painter or anything like that. I'm usually crouched on the floor. Works 360 degrees. Sometimes pieces, if I don't add drips into it, sometimes it's hard to tell up and down really, because I'm working all around the piece if it's on the floor. And there's always music blasting in the background, so I guess it's inspiration of some sort.
The way you're addressing the canvas, do you find you think maybe that's a subconscious Pollock influence, that he worked the exact same way?
It could be, yeah. I mean, that's how I started out working. I guess it's carried over. I've always had weird confined spaces to work in. I don't think I can get more than the 60 by 40 canvas down. I work in my basement studio that I kind of built, and the staircase is limiting to size. I want to do bigger, and I've thought about like working in the garage or something, but it's something about the little cocoon that I have, and I like working that way. I don't like to make things easy I don't take the easy way for anything. That's for sure.
There's something special that happens in a fight when a piece resists you a little bit. It forces you to pull something different from yourself, I think. Um, I think that the process of discovery is important for that. I also find it interesting that we share that as well with the writing part as well. Do you find any of that still coming up for you in any kind of way in your work as well?
I'm so envious of the people that can journal about their work and keep meticulous notes and things like that. And I just can't do it. I can't force myself to do it. I can't. I've tried, and I'm just like, this is ridiculous. This is not me. I find the process of writing too depressing and introspective. Like I don't like to look that deep into my soul. I don't always like what I see. So I find this keeps me more at, this is more of a meditative process where I can kind of lose. I think Gustin said it best when he talked about like his best work was when everyone left the room, when he left the room. I'm mincing his beautiful words, but if you look it up, it's poetic and it's true. Like once I step out of the room and just let whatever happen, my subconscious work on it, I feel like that's when things go the best.
You're finding a way to get lost.
Yeah.
I love that. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one.
I really like the simplicity of this. And you mentioned the meditative aspect before. Like, is the yin yang Taiji Taoist reference accidental? Like, I mean, come on, this is such a reference to spirituality. Like,
Uh,
what does that mean for you?
I don't know if it's accidental. I was working on the index cards. I had stumbled across this and I was like, okay, I like how this looks, but the index card was a little small of a space for it. And I was like, I want to try this on a bigger board piece. And like the piece of cardboard was just I was smoking a cigarette in the garage and I was like, oh, this cardboard would work perfect. So I just brought it into the studio and folded it in half and it came together very quickly. And I was just like I think I was listening to Alice Coltrane. It was a very spiritual jazz morning and I was like, okay, this speaks to me and on some level. And like I said, I really love minimalism and it's really hard sometimes to present minimalist piece of work online or something like that. I get a lot of comments that like this very simple but beautiful, and it's like I get that it's simple, like, but I like how it looks. So that's why I like the What Remains series. Is like I can be simple and like it's for me, and I don't have to worry about what somebody thinks about it.
Well, that little square of red really jumps out because the rest of it's so simple. Minimalist. Okay, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Oh, that's
Uh,
okay. It's simple. That's like a little piece of red tape, and it was somebody had put it on the thing and scribbled out, I don't know, maybe they thought there was a $200 record in that sleeve at one point in time, and who knows what, but I just like I love the sleeves when they're scribbled on, and I don't know, it just works. It breaks up moves your eye around.
Oh yeah, sure. I also wanted to mention the wood grain in the background. Of course, lots of your pieces are taken from an urban environment, and it's from shops and so forth, and you can see the mark of humans on it. But as I mentioned before, I see like mountain motifs and weather and like moons and things like that. Is that unconscious? Is that intentional? How representative dare you get? Because sometimes it feels like you have been influenced by the natural environment. Like, do you see that influence in your work?
I don't know. I really like working in like a split screen scenario. A lot of my canvases have like a break point, like a horizon point, I guess you could see it as. You could see it as like an inner or outer world. I've gone through this in my head before, but I never had to say it out loud. So on the spot, the narrative is not what I'd want it to be, but I'll think of something clever when you guys are gone.
I know you feel. Anyway, let's keep moving on.
Yeah, so like this piece has like a obvious almost horizon line feeling to it. No, I don't know that I'm intentionally trying to create any kind of horizon. It's one of those repetitive things that I like it's been with me for the last year or two that I can't seem to break out of yet. And I don't know that I want to right now because I don't think I've explored it to a place where I want. But this piece would be like the first piece is like a plateau moment for me where I was like, so this is one of the more recent pieces that I did, and I feel like this was a space that this came together very quickly, and like I think there's only the pink, I think is the only portion of paint that I use. I didn't go over the material at all. My wife found these perfect newsprint, super old and aged at a thrift store, and there was like whole stack of them. She's like, "Do you want these?" And I was like, "Yes." And I was putting them on, and I was like, "I love them as is. I don't want to paint over them." And this has kind of become, I think, the last 6 or 7 paintings I've done have been in this direction. Though this piece would be the most minimal of the newer work, and I'm gonna keep hold on to this one and look at it for a few years until I figure out what it's supposed to mean. That's why it's not named too, because I don't know. I don't know yet. I don't know what it means to me yet. It's too fresh.
I love that. One of the things that really resonates with me throughout I think all of your pieces and the way you approach your work there's this really great juxtaposition between as you and Paul talked about, these kind of organic qualities and these kind of organic shapes, but you always seem to do it in a very structured way. And there are always lots of clean lines, rich angles, and that's something that I definitely try to do myself, but you do it just so well.
Thank you.
What is that for you? Is that something that has kind of happened organically as well, or is that something you've intentionally tried to kind of swing back and forth between?
I I think it's just my autism. I like to line things up. I don't know. I like to line up cars when I was a little kid, and now I like to line up edges of paper. It's a compulsion, I guess. I can't break out of it. I like I like the lines. And sometimes working in different directions, like the lines won't be straight when you hang it in a certain way, and that drives me crazy. But I like kind of can't do anything about it at this point without setting the canvas on fire. So it took a long time because it really, that's why I like to have a few pieces hang around for a long time, because then your closeness to it fades and you can look at it from a different lens. Things that you hated about it maybe at the time become endearing, or like your favorite parts about it.
Do you find that in sharing your work in public settings, whether it be galleries or even just Instagram or wherever else, do you find that creates an opportunity for you to see the work in a different way, meaning specifically from audience engagement or audience reaction? People bring their own autobiographies to every piece they look at, every piece they engage with. They see what they see in it because it's specific to them. Has that ever changed your relationship to the work in almost maybe like a collaborative way? Like they've shown you some part of your work that you didn't know yourself, but you understood it better, them having seen it for you.
I find sharing my work on social media unsettling. It's like a necessary evil. I mean, I'd rather just make all of this stuff in private and never show it, because I enjoy doing it. Really, opening yourself up to criticism or all of that, I find hinders the creative process for me, I guess, because I get so nervous about how things are going to be perceived. I haven't had a lot of conversations with people deeply about the work before. Like I said, this is my first time really chatting out loud. I just have this stream of consciousness story in my head that I've been playing out of my art. It's constantly thinking about it. But I fought the urge to kind of like push myself, put myself out there online. I don't really put my face out there, or I don't write a lot about the work either. I just want people to interpret it for themselves. If it means something to somebody, that makes my day. Like if somebody messages me privately is like, I really like this, or like ask questions about like what kind of glue do you use, or where do you get your paper. I get more of those kind of questions, I guess, than questions about the meaning behind the work. So I enjoy that aspect of it. But when the work's hanging up at other places, I'm usually not there when people are buying it or something like that. So sometimes people will send me a message and be like, "Oh, we picked up your painting," and send me a photo of it in their house, and they love it, and that's like rewarding. That's the best part, I guess. And somebody else offers to pay money for it. It's, that speaks volumes, I guess.
I think so. I think it does in a really profound way. Let's go ahead and move on to the next piece.
Well, I'm glad you were just talking about that because this is one of my favorite pieces. And I wanted to ask you what the meaning is for you, because it's kind of like a poem. It's a visual poem. It's a poem without words. What does it mean for you?
This is one of my favorites too. And it's weird because I fight the urge to use imagery in my work immensely. I know a lot of collage artists do it really well. Duane does it great. And I really fight the urge. I like to create my own materials, and I feel like there's already a story written in this picture, and I wanted to be really minimal with it. There's a couple of these ones that I did from the same page out of a magazine that I just was really happy with. It's like, I mean, it's 3 pieces of paper with a scribble on it, and to me it's like could be a record cover or something. I loved it. I like the bird being below the city. I love birds, so I've been watching the birds outside the window all day today. So
Yeah, this is just really beautiful. Really speaks to me. And I wanted to mention before something that I noticed, which is inevitable in collage, I guess, but the overlapping of things, and you're not trying to hide it, and you're stapling stuff together as well. You're not hiding the construction. You can always maybe go too far. Like I want to say, what's the deeper meaning of that? Is it metaphorical or whatever? But you mentioned before how like just fitting pieces of paper together is it just feels right. I don't know exactly what you mean, like lining up cars. And my younger kid as well, he does exactly the same things that I did. And it feels natural. Like I didn't teach him to do that. But where do you think this comes from? Why do you think you want to organize and structure things in this way?
life is messy, and I guess this is a part of my life that I can control. I can make this picture what I want it to be. I'm in control in this moment. I like that. I like having a little control over the art. Sometimes I'm not in control. Sometimes the art is in control and it fights back. But there's moments like this, to me, is kind of like a couple pieces of paper and it looks just right. And like there's so many times where I've had pieces done like this and I'm like, this is perfect, but I'm still gonna add 30 more pieces of paper to it and ruin it. I spend an hour being like, I had it after 3 minutes. And sometimes I'm like, that's not enough work. You have to work harder. You have to do more. And then I ruin it. I'm like, well, better luck tomorrow.
I'm glad you stopped here. I'll
Yeah.
stop here as well. Should we go to the last piece?
More Elvis.
Do you have any specific rituals? You're so kind of control focused, which I relate to. Some people will come to the creative process to kind of lose control. And for me, as someone who deals with some mental health stuff, it's a place where I can find some quiet and feel very stable and sure. So I bring in a lot of rituals and routines, and I just wonder, given how your mind works around your practice and your process and that alignment, how ritualized is your studio time or your whole process?
I'd say that 99% of the time it's the same. It's like a very ritualistic. I come down, I pick out a record, I put it on, and if I'm working on a canvas, I get gloves on, I get the materials are all laid out. I don't like to clean up my space very much, so that's the little bacon-esque in the studio. Piles of paper seen it's like it can be so. I had to organize my desk to do that, so I'm like, I have like a nice stack of paper. I've never have that, and usually it's a mound and I'm working on top of the mound. I just dig in. I'm like an archaeologist, and paper is so nice and flat and in a stack when you get it, and then when it's like a deck of cards, when you throw it all out it's like a mess. 52 card pickup. So that's why I hate cleaning up, because it's like, what am I going to do with 100,000 cut off pieces of paper? And sometimes I see artist studios, I'm like, holy shit, that is really organized. They got all these boxes and cubbies. I'm like, that sounds so nice. I will never do that. Yeah, I'll just put on a record and I'll usually work until I have to flip it over, and then maybe I'll change course and go work on a different piece. Or if it's going good, I won't get up and flip the record, and it'll be silent for a little while. And I don't know. I work in, because I have kids that are running around and doing things. I'll work in small clips whenever I can get a bare. I mean, that's what's nice about collage too, and working on the smaller pieces like this, is I can do this in a short amount of time and still be able to go back to doing life stuff, because life really gets in the way of making art, doesn't it? Yeah, I mean, I cherish those days where I can just work nonstop without interruptions. Usually there's a lot of interruptions, so I have to work small and be focused when I'm working on it.
There's a couple things you've mentioned more than once throughout the course of the conversation. So now I definitely have to address them. I think it's for me really interesting and special that your music selection in your creative practice is on vinyl. And I
Yeah.
think that's telling for me, but I'd like to hear what it is about that for you in your process.
This is the ultimate nerddom.
Oh, come on.
That's my little selection area. You know?
I love that.
My little man cave down here, I guess we'd call it.
No, but I'm definitely very interested in that because I mean there's so many options for listening to music. I can understand music being important in the creative process, but you're being very intentional about the method to which you're listening to music and the medium of it. And so I have to believe that that's significant to you in some way.
Yeah, I don't know. My parents got me a record player when I was like 16 or something like that, and something just clicked. I liked it. It had that same vibe as like antiquing, same thing as like making these paintings that with the weathered feeling. It's just like I like the crackle. I like the feel of the jackets and the look of it. I don't know. I mostly listen to jazz these days. I really can't handle music with words. I listen to a lot of Japanese music lately too, as well. But anything that's not in English, because it's like I get the song stuck in my head. It's like nonstop. You know, I've been watching the NBA playoffs, and the stupid Bon Jovi State Farm commercial has been stuck in my head for like 3 weeks, and like I can't even sleep at night because I have this stupid song in my so I guess I've intentionally moved away from music with words, and I like the improvisation of jazz, and I feel like I try to do that, bring that into my work. I like to improvise and change things up, and even the red check marks that I made on that was just like that could have totally ruined the picture, but I'm like, I want to do it. I liked it. So
How important is risk to your process?
very, I don't do it much, but when it works out, it's great. It's working on a piece can be really frustrating when it's going bad, but I like, you know, the I've been trying to remind myself is like if I do a completely terrible piece of work, I can still go over the top of it, and it just adds history and depth to the piece. Like it's never ruined. And actually, like a lot of older work, I've gone in over the top and reworked it. If I run out of materials and there's canvases, paintings sitting around that haven't sold or haven't felt were good enough to show, I will go over the top of them. And that's why I like working on canvases from like the thrifts and things like that too, because they already like that whole clean white sterileness of a canvas is gone already, and I can just add to the history of the piece. It's already there.
I love that. Everything you've said throughout this entire conversation has just been a joy to hear for me because it's just so much similarity and overlap, and I just appreciate your candor and your openness to share so much of that, and I really appreciate it.
Pass the interview? Did I get the job?
You got it, man.
I'm
ready to come hang out in your basement and listen to records.
Yeah, right. Anytime. Yeah, for sure. I was going to ask you guys to make this multiple choice for me, but I guess this
an interesting format.
It's all fill in the blank, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's
fill in the blank was the worst part.
Yeah, Ross, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at some of our other conversations, but we have a growing library, and you are such a great addition to it. So I really appreciate your willingness to participate with us.
Awesome. I haven't listened to him yet. I wanted to be surprised. But I saw some artists on there that I was like, oh, I've admired these guys' works, and I want to check this out. So I will definitely listen to them now that I've made it over the hump and did the interview. So,
well, thanks so much, Ross. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.